Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here and 4Ks, and that is the topic of conversation for today. We have several new and recent titles from Paramount. One in particular that I'm really excited about. Long awaited. I don't think even had a Blu-ray before. I could be misremembering that, but I don't think so. And that is Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead with Nicolas Cage. A really great film, and one that was a little tepidly received at the time. And I think is maybe still a tiny bit underrated. And I'd like to think that this release will help rectify that. It is a really neat film about an EMT played by Nicolas Cage, and he is working in New York City, working nights, and he is going through some stuff at the time of the film. He's not like near a nervous breakdown territory, but he's definitely in a place where he's starting to see ghosts of people that he couldn't save. One in particular, this young woman that's sort of haunting him, and he's just really having trouble with it. And it's a beautifully shot film. It's shot by Robert Richardson, who had, of course, worked with Oliver Stone on JFK and things like that. But he'd worked with Scorsese on Casino, and it's funny because there's a couple films, well, more than a couple, I guess, in Scorsese's filmography that get comparisons and, maybe criticisms for being more of the same, quote unquote, which, even if that was the case, I love Scorsese's films so much that I wouldn't even care. But I don't think it's the case. So two things. One, so you have Goodfellas and Casino. Those films, I think, are seen in some ways by some critics, or I don't know. I feel like the differentiation has been made more evident over the years as more people watch those films over and over again. And I've just watched Casino again in 4K, and it looks incredible, by the way. And of course, there was some comparison to Goodfellas, which was a big deal for Scorsese. And that it was like kind of more the same because you have some of the same actors playing similar characters, especially Joe Pesci. But I would argue that the characters are different, and the character dynamics are different, and the looks of the films are different. Michael Ballhaus is the cinematographer that Scorsese used for Goodfellas, which is an incredibly shot film, and Ballhaus is one of the greats of all time. But Richardson has a different approach, and I think he is maybe the perfect guy to shoot a movie that is based in Las Vegas. He's got just an incredible style. He loves this great overhead, almost halo lighting that he does with a lot of his stuff, and I just think he's one of the greats for sure. Tarantino's used him recently, and he's really something special. But I think he does a great job with Bringing Out the Dead. I think he brings a visual texture to it that is different and dynamic. And what I'm getting at is, like, there were comparisons to Taxi Driver, of course, because you have two guys driving around New York at night, and there are some visual similarities, but there are definitely differences. And I think Michael Chapman, who shot Taxi Driver, did a great job. That's a beautiful looking movie. I still got to pick up that 4K, by the way. But this is different. I mean, even if you wanted to call them, sort of two sides of the same coin, opposites, I don't know if that's fully true, but I can see why people would make that comparison. But I think this movie, Nicolas Cage, as he goes encounters, he has a few different partners. One's played by John Goodman, another's played by Ving Rhames, and then Tom Sizemore, and they're all sort of different. It feels like almost disparate aspects of his personality in some ways, even though these are real characters and real people. The script is by Paul Schrader. It is based on I forgot the novel I think it's based on, but it's the last time that Scorsese and Schrader worked together, and there's even a little comment from Schrader in the interviews about him feeling that coming on. They're just different directors and different people, and even Nick Cage comment. I'll get to that in a minute. But so anyway, it's a good script, and I like how it sort of plays out. But one of the things that happens is Cage encounters a woman played by Patricia Arquette, whose father has had a heart attack, and he's been basically dead for like 10 minutes or so when Cage and John Goodman show up, but they are able to get a pulse going, and they bring him to the hospital, and then it becomes sort of an ongoing battle of will he live or won't he, and he keeps coding, which means he flatlines, and they have to zap him to get his heart back. So it's unclear, but there may have been already definitely some brain damage, if not brain death. So that's an ongoing thing, sort of an ongoing relationship that he has. And I can't remember if this is the movie where he and Patricia Arquette got together. I think it is, but anyway, it's got some interesting themes to it, and I think there are different themes than Taxi Driver. You have, it's these themes of like redemption and, helping people and faith. And I think if you look at Taxi Driver, it's just a different animal, despite the fact that Travis Bickle drives at night in New York, and the looks have some similarities. Anyway, I think it's a great movie. It stands alone on itself. I like the soundtrack. I like the cast. I think it's a really strong cast. People like Mary Beth Hurt showing up in a very small part where she's just a nurse that just keeps telling people that do stupid things to not do those stupid things, and why should we help you kind of stuff. She's great. Paul Schrader's ex-wife, I think, at the time. But yeah, just a really wonderful cast and a great story, beautifully shot, and experimental in some ways. And I thought this 4K looks good. I mean, I'm always second guessing myself now, but especially with Paramount, as people really seem to come down hard on their 4K transfers, especially of older films. But I feel like this is new enough that it looks good to me. I don't know. I see grain there. I see the lighting. I don't know. I just think it's a beautifully shot film, and this represents it well as far as I can tell. They've added a bunch of special features. So this comes with a slipcase, of course, and then a Blu-ray and a 4K. And it's got illustration or pictures on the inside, and of course the features are not on the 4K, which is something I like that Paramount mostly does. They'll put a commentary on there, but they won't waste any bit rate with any other features. So the features are on the Blu-ray itself, and there's some nice new features, and I want to say a good more than 30 minutes, almost 40 minutes of stuff. So we have filmmaker focus Martin Scorsese. That's 12 minutes. It's a new interview with him as far as I can tell. He talks about all kinds of things. It's about 12 minutes. All kinds of things about the film, and a couple things I pulled out. One was using Van Morrison's song TB Sheets, which he uses intermittently throughout this film. It's a really long song, and so it's got a lot of parts to it that can be used and repeatedly used. Apparently, he considered using that song for Taxi Driver before Bernard Herrmann's score, but instead uses it here to great effect, and it's part of a soundtrack that I really dig. With the Clash and Johnny Thunder and REM even. It's got a lot of stuff. It's got some old soul songs. It's really, really nice soundtrack, and different songs for each driver, that he's with. Like Ving Rhames listens to the old soul music, and then the Tom Sizemore is more the punk stuff, and so it's an interesting dichotomy there. Anyway, there's a bit where he talks about pairing the film, I think overseas, where they let him do screenings and he could pair it with movies, and he paired it with Carl Dreyer's film Ordette and Rossellini's film Flowers of St. Francis, and he goes into the specifics of why in this little featurette, and that was cool. And I have seen Ordette. I've not seen Flowers of St. Francis, but it's been a while for Ordette, so I do think it's interesting when he pairs a movie like movies like those, foreign, more dramatic films with this sort of dynamic thing that he's created, and just how interesting he is as a filmmaker in terms of taking his influences and melding them into something that is different. Like if you look at Ordette, you won't immediately go, oh yeah, this is totally Bringing Out the Dead. Dreyer's stuff is, it's very uniquely its own, but it's a bit more, it's hard to even describe, but certainly not dynamic in the way that Scorsese is in any film, but definitely not this film. But I've always find it interesting when he talks about films that are influences and things like that. That's just great stuff for me. Total catnip. They got a new interview with Nicolas Cage that's about 15 minutes, which is great. And he talks about how much he loves Scorsese films, when he was finding his way, when he was growing up, but finding his way into acting, and how they were the kind of films that made him want to stay on his path as an actor, which, is very cool. And I do find it interesting that he's worked with Schrader a couple times and Scorsese only once, but he's great in this. I really think it's one of the most sympathetic performances he's ever created, and characters he's ever created, and he's just wonderful. He talks about, again, this stuff is my favorite kind of stuff. He talks about Scorsese screening films for him in his private screening room in New York City, and he also mentioned and noted that Scorsese's his own projectionist, and that was a sight to behold, to see Martin Scorsese threading up his own projector and stuff like that. And he talks about a couple films he showed him, which I won't go into. You should watch it and hear that stuff. But Cage is a true cinephile, like a guy who knows his movies and takes influence from all across the spectrum of cinema. Another reason I love him, and he's one of my favorite actors. He talks about the differences between Scorsese and Schrader, and how he had dinner with both of them, and Schrader is much more gruff, says exactly what's on his mind, whereas Scorsese is more kind and generous. And that seems evident if you've ever seen either of them interviewed. They come off different. But it's a very thoughtful analysis of the character. And he talks about the single-day custody agreement that he had at the time with his son back in LA, and so that he would work all night, I guess, and fly back to LA on the weekends or whatever, and would see his son for a day and then fly back, and how that, he was totally wiped out, but it actually kind of worked for the character because this guy's just totally also wiped out, just kind of sleep deprived and really struggling, and so it actually worked. Anyway, such a cool guy. I really love Cage interviews. Paul Schrader's interviewed here for about 6 minutes, and he was talking about treating the book itself as raw material, plus a fair amount of research that he did, riding in an ambulance for a week, and he goes into, like I said, the feeling that he got on the set that this would be the last collaboration that he and Scorsese would have, just because it got to a point where you have two directors and it's just it's like kind of like two cooks, and Scorsese is a different director than Schrader. They're very different in the way that they shoot and the work that they do. The book is by Joe Connolly. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think Joe Connolly. I want to say that's the name of the book. And I think it's based on his own some experience as an EMT. Don't quote me on that part. I can't remember some specifics about the book, but the Schrader interview is interesting. It ends up being a little bit more about him than anything else, which is interesting. Robert Richardson's interviewed here for about 9 minutes and talking about how they had worked together on Casino. Talks about a bleach process that he had used for snow falling on cedars that affects the colors in a certain way, that he showed a print to Marty, and Marty really liked that. And he goes really specifically about the processes on the film using top lighting and other techniques, some experimental stuff too. Just a fascinating craftsman. And you can just tell, he is one of the greats when you hear him talk about his work and the choices they made. And like I said, it's a great looking movie, and I do hope it gets more appreciation with this 4K. This is one of my favorite releases of the year, and I'm so glad that it finally has come out. Okay, next up we have a 20th anniversary Steelbook 4K of Michael Mann's film Collateral. And this has been out before on 4K, but this new Steelbook is pretty nice. You have your sort of J card that sticks to the top of it, but it has a little quote from Vincent on the back, and it's a nice looking Steelbook. Of course, comes with a Blu-ray and a 4K, but I like this Steelbook. It's really nice. But in terms of this movie, it's one that has really grown on me the more I watch it. The first time I watched it, I think I felt like the Tom Cruise character got a little too crazed in the back and just became some kind of Terminator or something. But the more I watch it, the more I appreciate that that's kind of what the character is in a way, and that this is a one crazy night movie, and that is one of my favorite things in cinema. It's not, a lot of One Crazy Nights are comedies, but you can apply it to a lot of great movies that aren't comedies. Crazy implies goofiness to me, but I still apply it to things like Assault on Precinct 13, or even Halloween is kind of a One Crazy Night kind of movie. And so this is one of those. It's 10 hours in the lives of these characters, and you have basically a hitman, more or less, played by Tom Cruise, with a really great look. Just this silver fox, white hair and beard look. And we see him at the airport at the beginning of the movie. He bumps into a very young Jason Statham, and they exchange bags. And then we have this Jamie Foxx character who's a very organized, thoughtful cabbie who has this whole plan to open his own limousine service, I think. He's got a business plan. He's very organized. Very sharp guy. And I love Jamie Foxx. I think he's one of my favorites as well. Tom Cruise, obviously great. And I really dig him in this. But so Fox first encounters Jada Pinkett Smith, and that becomes sort of a plot point that will arise later. But then he happens upon Tom Cruise, and he almost doesn't pick him up in his cab. Like, there's a moment, he's just gotten done talking with Jada Pinkett, and she kind of left it on a really sweet note with him. And so he's kind of in a daze and kind of smitten with her. And Tom Cruise's character walks up, asks if the cab is available, and Jamie Lee Foxx ignores him at first. Cruise's character is going to walk away, and then he says, "No, wait, sorry, I was not paying attention. Hop in." And that ends up being a really crucial life decision that he makes. The Vincent character, Tom Cruise's character, offers the Max driver character, the cabbie, Jamie Foxx, $600 to stick with him for the whole night. That he's basically got a bunch of stops to make in town. Mostly what Jamie Foxx doesn't know is he's going to be killing people that he's stopping to see. And then he needs to get to the airport at like 6. And Fox agrees to do it, or Max agrees. And they sort of cagily get to know each other Vincent's a really specific, very sharp character as well. Obviously a total sociopath, just absolutely insane, and a killer who kills without any compunction whatsoever. But they enter into this, relationship sort of, and it gets more and more tense as the night moves on, and Max realizes what's happening and how it becomes more of a hostage situation, and it gets really intense by the end. I won't go into it if you haven't seen it, but it's a really solid Michael Mann film. And it was not, I don't think, the first he shot on high definition video. I want to say that was Public Enemies. But this film, he mentions shooting on the Sony, I think I have the info here, Sony Cinealta HDW F900. Apparently that was the main camera that was used. I think this 4K transfer looks really good because has a filmic texture to it. It has grain to it. Despite being video, it still has that video look, but the transfer makes it look really nice. Apparently there was several cameras used. There's an Arriflex 435, which was used in conjunction with Panavision Primo lenses. A Panaflex Millennium XL, also used in conjunction with those Panavision lenses. And let's see here, Panaflex Panavision Millennium and a Millennium XL. So those two were used. The nightclub sequence that we see in the film, I guess, was shot in 35, so that looks a little different. But overall, I think it's an interesting look. I love Michael Mann's approach to visual design, both in terms of production and cinematography. Obviously, he's not shooting them himself, but he's obviously very involved in the look of his movies and the way he shoots things at night. And I guess what he's able to shoot with the Sony camera in terms of lower light allows him to do some things that I think he was interested in. But he's also interested in the compressed amount of time and what happens to these characters during that time and stuff like that, and developing this character with Tom Cruise and stuff. It's just a really enjoyable thriller and a movie that I've come back to several times, and like I said, gets better every time. Okay, so in terms of the features, these are, I think, all ported from the DVD, and in fact, the making of, which is 41 minutes, which is very, very cool, but it's an SD feature. It's not 4K. It's not even HD. That includes interviews with Michael Mann, Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, Jada Pinkett Smith, screenwriter Stuart Beattie, some of the other cast members, and some of the crew, I think, as well. And a really great overview of the film. I mean, it is a little bit of the, promotional featurette kind of stuff, but it's 41 minutes, so there is a bit more depth to it than just a promotional featurette. And I just love to hear Michael Mann talk about making movies because I'm a big fan of his, and his approach to the whole process is fascinating. And Tom Cruise obviously respects him too, and they talk about developing the characters, and Jamie Foxx same way. Really solid stuff, and I'm glad it's included despite it being an SD. Special Delivery is a 1-minute featurette where Michael Mann talks about Tom Cruise, how recognizable he is, and that he would have to, as Vincent, be, Tom Cruise can't go out even putting a hat on or whatever, like he'll get recognized. But Vincent had to be unrecognizable, so they wanted to see if that was even possible. And they had Tom Cruise dress up as a FedEx or UPS guy, deliver a package with a hat and sunglasses on, and then he sits down and even has a conversation with the patron at the place he delivers, and nobody caught it. Nobody was able to recognize him, so I guess mission accomplished in that sense. But that's a neat little bit. Just neat to see him in that outfit. Includes a deleted scene with commentary from Mann, shooting on location, Annie's office. It's about 2.5 minutes. That's one of the latter sequences in the film. That's Jada Pinkett Smith's office, how they shot that sequence. And then they have one called Visual Effects MTA Train, which is a 2.5 minute behind the scenes of shooting a train sequence that is later in the film, where Mann used some green screen, and he talks about why and stuff like that. There's also a Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx rehearse featurette, which is about 4 minutes and 13 seconds, and it's a read through in like an apartment and then on a sound rehearsal stage. and it's Mann sort of directing a little bit here and there, but you get to see their initial reads, and then they compare it with what's actually used in the film and the differences, and it's neat. It's neat to see that sort of stuff. But very nice disc, very nice steelbook, worth grabbing. Additionally, we have a 20th anniversary 4K Ultra HD of Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, and this includes both the theatrical and unrated versions, as well as a digital code, which I should mention the other ones came with as well. So this one, yeah, we have one 4K and two Blu-rays. One with the feature films and one with so that has some special features, and the other has the rest of the special features on it. So that's what's included in this set. But this one, there was a time before cable when the local anchorman reigned supreme. Enter the hard-hitting world of 1970s local TV news, where Ron Burgundy, Will Ferrell, and his loyal Channel 4 news team are San Diego's #1 rated news source. All is well in their male-dominated world of news until beautiful rising star reporter Veronica Corningstone turns it all upside down. Sparks don't just fly, they ignite an all-out war between the two perfectly coiffed anchor persons. In a job where it pays to keep a straight face, Anchorman is the comedy that makes it almost impossible to stop laughing. And this is a very funny movie. You don't need me to tell you that. You have some incredible supporting cast members like Paul Rudd and this list goes on and on. Sort of Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, Dave Koechner. I'm a huge Dave Koechner fan. Fred Willard, of course. Christina Applegate is Veronica Corningstone, and she's great, and she holds her own with these guys. But this is of that classic era. It's directed by Adam McKay, written by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, produced by Judd Apatow, when Apatow reigned supreme. And I'm not saying he doesn't anymore, but it feels like the era of this kind of comedy is sort of gone by the wayside. The kind of comedy where you had a lot of improvisation. I mean, we certainly still see this, don't get me wrong, but this was like the beginning or the crest of that wave with 40-Year-Old Virgin and a whole bunch of others that Apatow produced around this time. And it's one of the funniest, I think, to this day. I think what Will Ferrell's doing, he's really found this character, made him quite ridiculous and incredibly humorous. And his backup guys, Paul Rudd and Koechner and Brick, as played by as played by Steve Carell, is really, really wonderful. So this is nice to have in a 4K, and it looks nice, although that's not necessarily why you'd be watching this movie, but I think it does look good. So the 4K UHD includes the feature film, the theatrical version. Just so you know, that's only the theatrical version. The extended version is on the Blu-ray, so you don't get that extended version in 4K. So the Blu-ray includes theatrical and extended versions, commentary by Adam McKay. The commentary isn't even on the 4K. Commentary by Adam McKay, Will Ferrell, Lou Rawls, Andy Richter, Kyle Gass, Paul Rudd, Dave Koechner, and Christina Applegate. Very enjoyable stuff. Bloopers. Now that stuff just cracks me right up. 36 deleted and extended scenes. I mean, they famously made basically another movie out of the deleted and extended scenes of this one. Afternoon Delight music video. ESPN Sports Center audition for Ron Burgundy. Disc 2 featuring Wake Up Ron, the film Wake Up Ron Burgundy, the Lost Movie, unrated. So that's what I was talking about. Intro commentary with Will Ferrell and Aaron Zimmerman, raw footage, quote, good takes, cast auditions, Comedy Central, real comedy Anchorman, table read, and so much more. So this is really a stacked special edition, 10th anniversary, nice 4K. You get multiple movies, multiple cuts. You got a lot happening here. That's very nice. And then we enter the world of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And we have South Park. Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, the 25th anniversary for the first time on 4K. And this is another one that has a theatrical version that is on the 4K. Not as much in the way of, this has a 4K and a Blu-ray, but not as much in the way of special features, at least that are listed. I forget what's on this. I mean, this is the classic, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman star in the R-rated movie to see their favorite, sneak into an R-rated movie to see their favorite Canadian superstars. Now the boys have to stand up to their parents, stop World War III, and send Satan back to hell before he destroys the world. It's all part of a young boy's life in this quiet little mountain town. So this has commentary by Matt Stone and Trey Parker. What Would Brian Boitano Do music video, and theatrical trailers, as well as the 4K includes the theatrical version, and the Blu-ray has a sing-along version included there as well. So a pretty nice 4K. And again, this is another one that it looks good, but I don't know if that's why you're watching these. But you obviously are trying to decide, should I upgrade to 4K? I mean, it definitely pops more in 4K than I've ever seen it. A digital code is also included, obviously. But it's a pretty nice 25th anniversary edition, even if I would have liked a little bit more of the features that I remember anyway. But that commentary is interesting. So anyway, that is South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut. And of course, going with that, we have Team America World Police from the creators of South Park. This is the 20th anniversary edition of this film. I can't believe this movie is 20 years old as well. Using puppetry techniques inspired by Jerry Anderson's Super Marionation sagas, things like Thunderbirds. If you've seen that, great show. I'm a big Thunderbirds fan, so I was kind of knocked out when I was into Thunderbirds when this came out, because they just had, I want to say they were just coming out on DVD at that time, and there was laser discs of like Thunderbirds or Go, some of the Jerry Anderson movies that he did. But just the idea that you have these puppets, I just thought was brilliant that they would go so esoteric. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone skewer U.S. politics and celebrate celebrity activism with their hilarious and controversial satire about high-tech international law enforcement agency that recruits a renowned Broadway thespian to help them mount a series of ill-conceived anti-terrorist campaigns. Parker and Stone provide voices along with Kristen Miller and Darren Norris. Definitely. Okay, so it says that the disc one is the feature film. So I think that's the R-rated cut. And then the Blu-ray, because it has both, it has two discs in here. And the Blu-ray has the uncut and, I guess, R-rated feature films. Yeah, I mean, this is an outlandish movie. I mean, it has some really crazy stuff. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil how crazy it gets and how out there it gets. And I just don't think they would even attempt something like this now. So that's crazy that 20 years ago, this could get made by a major studio. I get that, Parker and Stone were very hot and still to this day are two of the most successful gents in the business. But it's nuts that this, if you haven't seen this, it's just absolutely insane. Has some really nice features here. Team America introduction, building the world, crafting the puppets, pulling the strings, capturing the action. Those are all different little featurettes. Miniature pyrotechnics, up close with Kim Jong-il. There's a crazy sequence with Kim Jong-il in this. Dressing room test, puppet test, deleted extended scenes, outtakes, animated storyboards. All that stuff's included on the Blu-ray. But looks better than ever in 4K. And it's neat to see this movie come back now. It feels like an interesting one to watch right now, I think. Anyway, some nice stuff from Paramount on 4K. Just wanted to run through those. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.